I'm Dr. Jeff Kaplan, and for over 30 years I've traveled the globe from Dubai to Moscow and Johannesburg, from Singapore to Shanghai and Istanbul. I've studied the world's best businesses and the people that run them. But something is very different now. From the boardroom to the break room, there's a growing realization that our relationship with work is broken. But it's not too late. You still have a choice. Hold on to the past and struggle to survive, or join the willing, change, and thrive in the world of tomorrow that's already arrived. So if you're willing to think different, willing to work different, willing to change at the speed of now, then you're willing to win. Well, it's that time again, and this is Willing to Win. I'm Jeff Kaplan.
And I'm Tara Thomas-Getman. We're proud to be your co-hosts as we deliver interesting and engaging content. We hope, at least that's what we believe, and so our sincerity is hopefully shining through. This is an interesting topic because every time I hear you talk about the ICE principle, the 90s girl in me thinks about Vanilla Ice and those dance routines we used to do pre-TikTok. But this is actually a serious and very cool acronym. So tell us about it, and what does ICE, I-C-E, represent?
Well, I think about only two things all the time. That's ice, ice, baby. No, I'm just kidding. Just wanted to add on to your reference. No, ICE is really a breakthrough in the way to think about strategy. And I've shared on prior shows the fact that I think we've overcomplicated business, in a big way. And not only, and I think we did that, I think it's been purposeful that that's happened, because this overcomplication allows people to believe that they have control over certain areas, and then they become very territorial, and then that becomes part of a bureaucracy that grows bigger and bigger and less responsive and less productive, and it just was not sustainable that would happen. And we've seen that. Even the government of today, whatever you say, good, bad, or indifferent in terms of government services, is infinitely more responsive than the government 30 years ago. I remember there was I used to live out in California, and there was a poll, and it was like death, taxes, and the DMV were the three things that people hated most, right? That's how people viewed it. So we had these organizations that grew up that were really over complex. They were very exclusive, right? So you had to have gone to the right school. You have to have the right qualifications. I will tell you that it was really interesting. We had people like my mom is a great example. She worked at a place for 30 years, right? She ran a center, a child center at a community college for 30 years, but she could never be executive director because she was a few units short of a degree requirement, right? So they would hire somebody that literally came out of school with that degree and assume that person was better qualified than she had been, not giving any credit to the practical day-to-day. And it's not just that. We see that over and over again. People working 10, 15 years, and then somebody else getting hired simply because they came out of school with a certain degree. There should be maybe equivalent. If you're at a place for 10 years, maybe that means that you have a master's in this place, right? And we should give credit for that. And so really, when we started thinking about how do we simplify strategy, we wanted to first of all understand what it is. And the first question we ask is, what does strategy do? Right? What is really the purpose of strategy? So we spent about 10 years, and each year we would go through and we would pull down the annual reports of the Fortune 100 companies. And then we would go through and we would parse out what are the strategies that are there. And strategy isn't some long document that's 50 pages long. They're like planks. They're like, we would like to capitalize on opportunities in emerging markets. We would like to, rethink how we, interact with our customers, right? Those are the strategies that were out there. And we analyze them and try to figure out what is the end purpose of that. And we were having a really hard time sort of making the connection when I did an interview with an absolutely amazing an executive. His name was Clay Jones, and he was the CEO of Rockwell Collins, right? And that's worth of a show in and of itself, and we'll bring back the idea of Clay in that episode another time. What he did was amazing and part of American history. But I asked him, what do you think the main purpose of strategy is? And he said, well, I think the main purpose is innovation. And I said, well, like leadership, it's got lots of definitions, right? 50,000 plus definitions of leadership. There's a similar number of definitions of innovation. Nobody really knows what that means. What does it mean to you, Clay? And he looked at me and said, that is so easy. He goes, innovation is making it so the company is free to think differently. I'm like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense.
That's good.
And so we started thinking about that, and we compared what we were seeing in our research to this idea of innovation, and we realized, oh yeah, there's really only 3 things a strategy can do. That's 10 years produced this insight. The insight was there's only 3 things a strategy can do. We can innovate, we can collaborate, and we can engage, right? Innovation is how do we think differently tomorrow than we think today. Right? And that involves a lot. That's not a simple thing, because there's a lot of culture that says, oh no, this is the way it's always been done. Don't do that. Here we always do it A, B, C. Don't dare bring in D, right? That kind of thing. And so it's building culture. It's building acceptance. It's leading by example. And it's giving permission to people and rewarding them for thinking differently. It's a lot of work. The second thing is collaboration, right? How do we work differently tomorrow than we do today? Because if we have a new idea, chances are to implement that idea, we're going to need to work differently to get the outcome, right? So that was the second thing that we found was a universal strategic outcome. The third one, which was most interesting and really started to help us gel this theory that we put together for the organization of tomorrow, is engagement, right? Engagement is the idea of how do we work with and sell to more people than we've ever done before, right? And now with that framework, how do we innovate, think differently, work differently, collaborate, and engage with more people than ever before? ICE, innovate, collaborate, engage. With that framework, we went and we reanalyzed the Fortune 1000. And what we found is virtually all of the organizations there have an ICE principle in their strategies, that their strategies represent. As a matter of fact, the higher up on the list an organization is, the more likely they are to have pure ICE planks. Now, we found that there were a couple of other kinds of planks there. One of those we call FEOs, which is financial optimization or excellence, and really that's just what we call a throwaway to the street. It's a strategic plank that really isn't so much about how we're going to think differently, work differently, make more money, work with more people, which is the basic ICE stuff. This was about we're going to save this amount of money, or we're going to look at operations and try to screw down on those and really get some more profit out of that. What that really is a hidden message, sort of like a dog whistle to the investing community that, hey, at this company, we're taking care of our resources, your resources that you've invested in. So that's what we call a throwaway to the street. Just a reminder that, yeah, we're watching the cash register. The other thing that's often listed as a strategy, but isn't a strategy, is social corporate responsibility. The idea that the organization wants or should do social good is not a strategy, it's a responsibility,
sure.
Right? You employ 10, 20, 30, 50, or in the case of Walmart, 100 or million people, 100,000 or a million people, you've got a social responsibility. You are a social player. So once you start taking those out, we found that the ICE principle really held. And our research showed that of the Fortune 100, 28% of the Fortune 100 had an innovation plank.
Interesting.
25% had a collaboration plank, and almost half, 45%, had an innovation plank. And let me just show you an example of what that is. We were doing some work with Procter & Gamble, and because of the nature of the work, I can't share the details of it, but I can tell you it involved analyzing their strategy. And because their strategy is a public record, we can talk about that here, and everybody's protected. The first of their strategies this year, and I believe this was about 5 or 10 years ago, it said, investing in innovative products that deliver better performance, qualities, experiences, and value, right? Well, that is innovation. How do we think differently? It's saying we are going to invest in new ideas. Awesome. That is an ICE plank. The second one, investing in capabilities, and capabilities, anytime you see that in a plank, immediately tells you that's collaboration. We're going to work differently, right? We're investing in capabilities to understand customer needs better than ever. And the third, so that's ICE. So it's I and C. And to make ICE, they only had 3, was investing in creating and building brands that customers prefer. So that's a new way to engage with folks, right? So ICE, it fit the mold perfectly. Here's what we found. If you decide you want to check this out on your own and look up some Fortune 100 companies and check out their strategies, see if they fit the ICE format, just understand this. Most organizations, if they have 3 strategies, are really conservative, they're doing well, no need to change the course, right? So 3 means keep steady, right? Keep doing more of the same. If they have 5 strategies, and for whatever reason, it's usually 3 or 5. It's very rarely 4, 6, 5, 2. It's usually 3 or 5. If they have 5 strategies, they're saying that, hey, they're probably a company that's had legal or regulatory issues or having performance issues, and so they're trying to reinforce to a large group of constituents that probably are thinking, hey, we need you to do this. We need you to do this. They put out more planks to try to do more in a year. The problem with those is big companies are like steering a steamer, right? You don't like go and like have a big like tanker ship and try to turn at a 90-degree angle, turn on a dime, right? You have to go, oh, we're going to turn 3 miles, so let's like move an inch to the left and maybe we'll be in the right place, right? That's how it is with an organization. So if you have all these planks, all these strategic things that you want to accomplish, nothing will be done. And so we call it the Goldilocks rule. The Goldilocks rule is 3 strategies shows you're conservative, 5 strategies shows you're trying to do more, and most often, more often than not, those 5 strategies are ICE plus a social corporate responsibility and a throwaway to the street. So it's an amazing insight, right?
Yeah,
and that's
absolutely.
simple. Now, it may seem complex, like how long I took to explain that, but we did that in like 5 minutes. My strategy book was 1,100 pages, right? I mean, anybody can start thinking about that. Before we finish this one segment, I do want to bring up one strategy that I'm so excited about. Now, I mentioned my mom earlier, and she was a union rep for clerical and teachers union in community colleges, right? So she's very much about the worker, and she had certain opinions of big companies, Walmart included. Now, in my experience, I've spent my entire adult life, my professional career in boardrooms, right? I've never met the evil empire. I've never met the bad executive that sits behind the curtain and is seeking to destroy the world, right? $1 million kind of guy. I've never met that person, right? I've seen a lot of great people try to do great things, and in big companies, it's easy to be the bad guy because you're doing well, right? Nobody takes a shot at them. But look at the excellent work. We're going to share this with our audience. If you're watching the podcast, the visual version of the podcast, the tape version, you'll be able to see it. If not, we're going to have this downloadable at our site. But what we have here is the 2019 strategy from Walmart. And I've got to tell you, I've never seen a better built strategy. In it, they want to win with stores, they want to engage in digital relationships, and they want to add critical capabilities. Now, let's think about that for a second, right? Winning with stores. So basically they're saying in the era of bricks and clicks, right, where it's right? How do we engage with our customers at the store level? Because they'll buy more, they'll be more profitable if they come through the door. How do we do it? That's thinking differently. So that's innovation, right? That's fantastic.
Sure.
Now, the second one has a word that I mentioned to the audience. If they hear it, they know it's a collaboration, right? It says add capabilities, right? Add critical capabilities to our organization. So what are the things we need to do to work differently in this new environment? And then finally, they say that they want to deepen their digital relationships. And what is that but engagement in a whole new way? This thing is amazing because in one sheet, and it's very graphical, it's like an infographic, they go from laying out what their overall plan is, what their growth plan and their financial target is, their organizational strategy, and then they say, these are the 5 ways that we're going to go out and do that. So as an individual department leader or as an individual employee, every day you can look at this list and say, I'm advancing that strategy. This is just beautiful. And it's just hats off to Walmart. Regardless of what you think of the organization, they are at the top of their game when it comes to strategy.
It's so interesting. And I love how you're able to boil it down. Like you said, a layperson can do this. You don't have to be somebody who's diving into thousands of pages of research. In 5 minutes, you can pull up this information easily at the click of your fingertips on the internet and determine through that lens of ICE, what are these top companies doing that I can apply to my mom and pop or, small town entity that I'm a part of to make it better? And like Goldilocks, is it too hot? Is it too cold? Or is it just right? I love how ICE is the lens through which we can, in a sort of a simplistic way, uncover the complexities of these, multi-million-dollar corporations that actually do align with some of the strategies in our everyday operations that we're working for anywhere.
And it's so nice you say it twice. Ice, ice, baby.
And speaking of corporate social responsibility that you have stressed now is not just a buzzword, it's something that these corporations feel obligated to put in play because their consumers, their customers are demanding it. And social media has been that game changer, right? Because if you find out that a shoe company is going to donate a pair of shoes to a child without overseas who needs them, you're more inclined to perhaps pay for those shoes, knowing that you're doing something for the betterment of society in your purchase. We are going to come back after this and hear from correspondent Alyssa Nolte, who through social media has found just the everyman blue-collar workers who are questioning what's the difference between leadership and management, and how does that align with my company's strategy? So don't go anywhere. We'll have more, not with Vanilla Ice, but with Alyssa after this. Lift Innovate is one of the fastest growing companies in America. The technology consulting firm has a reputation for being a leader in customer success and research. For the second year in a row, Lift has landed on the prestigious Inc. 5000 list of America's fastest growing private companies in its latest ranking. Lift's mission is to bridge the gap between the world's best technologies and the people that use them, striving to change the way our partners view work, one innovative idea, service, and solution at a time. Thanks for staying with Willing to Win. I'm Tara Thomas Getman, and joining us is correspondent Alyssa Nolte. How's it going?
It's so good. Excited to be on this episode.
You are the curator extraordinaire of all things social media where the Legion is concerned. Tell us what you've uncovered that's fascinating, that really aligns with everything we're talking about, leadership versus being just managed.
Yeah, I tell people when it comes to Willing to Win, I have the coolest role on this show. I get to go out and look for the people that inspire me, look for the people that are telling the same story that we're telling, that are already part of our group, already part of our Legion, already part of our culture and our movement, and they just don't even know it yet. I found this amazing TikTok by a guy who goes by the name of Infantry Guru, and he's talking about the difference between leadership and management. And a few episodes ago, Jeff talked about, our view of leadership and management and how we view the differences between those two terms. And what really struck me is this idea that people don't really want to be managed, that people don't want to just have you come in and say, do this, do that, I'm the boss, and what I say goes. He was saying that people just want to be led, people want to be inspired, people want you to take them through what they're going through and bring them from point A to point B with inspirational leadership.
Let's check out this Infantry Guru TikTok that Alyssa found.
Good morning. It's a new week, and I want to challenge you with a question. Are management and leadership synonymous? Maybe, but I don't think these two words are interchangeable when it comes to dealing with people. You see, we manage budgets, programs, vehicle fleets, and supply lines. But people don't want to be managed, they want to be led. I think Steve Jobs said it best when he says, management is persuading people to do things they don't want to do, while leadership is inspiring people to do things they never thought they could. So I want to hear what your thoughts are. Have a great week. Stronger together. Enhance the core.
Wow, that is so cool, because we've talked about how this movement, Willing to Win, it empowers everybody, right? So it doesn't matter if you're somebody working in a factory or a blue-collar job, you still have a voice.
Yeah, and in this case, this is someone who's in the military, someone who is not in business, someone who is not in what you would consider a typical listener for Willing to Win. When we're talking about business and strategy and sales, we're listening to someone who is talking about leadership from the mind of the military.
That's so cool. Thank you for finding that, and I know you'll have a lot more cool content to share, so we'll see you soon. Don't forget to join the Willing to Win Legion. Just go to our website, willingtowin.org, as you can see, or if you're listening, it's willing the word spelled out, the number 2win.org, where you can watch, listen, and read more about the movement. Check out those cool infographics and other tidbits we share that you'd like to learn more about, and fill out that short form so you can get involved. Social media, we always talk about it, but it's kind of like that love-hate relationship, right? Where you can go down the rabbit hole and waste a lot of time, or in the case of Alyssa, you can uncover some really thought-provoking clips, even if you are restricted by TikTok or Instagram to a minute or less.
Yeah, we talked a little bit earlier, you were saying about how there's so many organizations now that are tying social corporate responsibility to what they do on the internet. You've got all these people that are offering their opinions on the internet, right? And the thing is, a few years ago, and we'll talk about another episode, there was a group of guys that predicted this, right? They call it the Clue Trade Manifesto, and basically they said that the future of the internet is really just that it's going to be a conversation. And they talked about the rules of conversations, and one of those rules is that it is an authentic human voice. So when somebody comes out and they're doing social corporate responsibility, you can, and it's true, you can feel it. When they're doing corporate responsibility just to sell shoes or sheets or something like that, and they're not the original, they didn't have that idea, you could tell that passion's not there. It's inauthentic. Same thing when we look at, and we get so many different submissions from the Legion each week. When we look at those submissions, we can tell who's sincere and really thinking about this stuff and has an authentic voice, and who is doing it potentially, for other reasons. And that's why Alyssa's so amazing at her job, because she always brings us these great authentic voices.
That's right. It's the rise of the social media influencer, if you will, where somebody in a car, as we've seen, talking to a friend can record their insight, and it can go viral and resonate with thousands, if not tens of thousands of people around the world. One of the tweets that Alyssa found from I Am Coach Mitch, is his handle, was really aligning with a lot of what we've been talking about. And it reads, if you play 30 minutes, go all out. If you play 15 minutes, go all out. If you play 5 minutes, go all out. If you play 1 minute, go all out. If you don't get in, go all out. Being the most vocal person cheering your teammates on. Coaches will take notice. Make a difference, Coach Mitch. I love that. We both have been involved in competitive sports, but even if you're not, the world is a competitive place, right? So it applies to the daily life, the grind on the job. If you don't have access to the boardroom and you feel trapped in the break room, the fact is you need to always give it your all. And it goes beyond that. It aligns with the ICE principle. Become a champion of strategy. What does that mean? Tell us about that, because I love that.
Well, I tell you, people feel like that. Sometimes I talk to people about the future and about social media and how things are getting, so broad, like anybody can have a voice. And they feel like that this is this expansive thing and they're going to get lost, right? They're not going to get lost in the middle like we talk about strategy. They're going to get lost in tomorrow, and they really don't know, where their future lies or their place in it. But when I think about it, it is really, my vision of tomorrow is much more like a game I watch my kids play. They've got one of those game consoles, and they play Call of Duty, but a special kind. It's called World at War, or something like that.
World of Warcraft.
No, it's World. It's a Call of Duty. It's World War or something. But the bottom line is, it's different than the other games because they're all dropped on this really gigantic map. They drop like 150 of these competitors on the map, and then they go, and it's the last person standing. But it's a gigantic map. As the time goes in the game, the circle that defines where they can go becomes smaller and smaller and smaller, right? And so I think a lot of people feel that tomorrow it's going to be bigger and bigger and bigger, that circle, and they're going to get lost out there and they won't have a voice, right? It's actually the exact opposite, because, you've got, let's say you're in an organization and you work with a small group, your team, right? And you work every day and you say, that Diane that's on our team, oh my gosh, she's got so many great ideas. She's so good at me. If only the executives could hear her. If only she could get by her boss, who has absolutely tried to block her and not allowed her to talk to anybody else and takes credit for all her ideas, she would go, through the roof, right? And that's what this platform allows. That's why it's so important that people start, claiming their own voice, because that circle is not getting bigger, it's getting smaller. It's just that you can reach more people, right? There's ways to do it. It's a very exciting time. And as long as you've got that authentic voice, then you definitely have, a role to play. But when we think about, the future, and we think about this, the willing to win, the whole concept. I know that we got some feedback this week from a CEO, right? A CEO had a conversation with one of our executive producers that says, oh yeah, I've heard your show and you're trying to create a revolt. Right, you're trying to create a revolt. My employees are going to suddenly start demanding things that we can't deliver. But that's not the case at all. As you know, in this show, CEOs have absolutely nothing to fear. As a matter of fact, the CEOs are probably the perfect person to be a member of the Legion because they have it really easy. Right, you become a CEO. Ask any CEO. You become a CEO. The first day on the job, they go into their office, and what do? They read the manual that was left behind, so they know exactly what to do.
Right.
I say that sometimes in corporate speeches to executives, to CEOs, and they start laughing insanely because everyone shares the same experience. It's like you get there and there are no instructions. They don't know how to do it. They are just looking to create the best company they can and satisfy as many of their stakeholders as possible. So this movement is about the optimization of the stakeholder and the worker and all those, and trying to bring them all together, in one place. So when we talk about a flat organization, it does not mean that we're taking the power away from the executive or the reporting structure away from the organization. What we're talking about is access. We're talking about a hyperlinked organization where a frontline worker can have lunch with the CEO because they have good ideas and everybody respects them. And so I think that is something that we really need to remember, that it's not, this zero-sum game. So when we think about what we should be doing as a member of the Legion to advance our own career, to create our own voice, the first thing we can do is become a champion of strategy. The last episode, we asked people to go out and just find out what is the strategy of my organization, right? Now what we want to ask you is, if you found that strategy, and if you can't find your own, pick any major company. Just pick any major company, right? And then once you understand that strategy, ask, what can you do in your role, or if it's another company, what could you do if you had a frontline role in that organization? What could you do in your day-to-day to advance that strategy? So if the executive, the CEO of BT shows up in Singapore to talk to the receptionist, right, and says, what are you doing to advance strategy? He or she will have an answer for that because it's part of the. So this is the responsibility we as employers as employees have to take, and it all comes full circle to what you were talking about in the tweet about playing for 30 minutes all out, playing for 5 minutes all out. Business is a contact sport. You're not expected to be passive and only do what you're told. If you're in a company like that, leave. Right? Because otherwise, there are a lot of other companies out there that are looking for players, right? People to get involved. And that's our message this week. Find out what your strategy is, then add to that 3 things that you can do to advance your organization's strategy.
And I love that you brought up that we don't want to imply that this is some kind of inciting a worker revolt, because the fact is, you just nailed it. We as employees have to take ownership, not just in our role, but in the overall strategy or goal setting of the organization. And that does take work, right? You have to put yourself out there. You can't afford to be passive if on the flip side, you say that you're stuck or you complain to somebody when you pass them in the hallway, if you're not willing to sort of champion the strategy, no matter how minuscule you might feel your role is in the entire organization.
Absolutely. And if you think that we are literally a workers' movement and not an organization and a human communities movement, which is really what we are. We are a human communities movement. If you think in those terms that somehow this is a workers' movement, that doesn't add up, right? Because a workers' movement would be us trying to organize a group of workers for some purpose, and then trying to get those workers to win certain concessions against the organizational leaders. That's a scarcity principle. Right? That means that, there's only so much, and therefore we're trying to get something, and our win is your loss, right? That goes back to my dad and the reason I would never be a salesperson, because his selling, good deal for him, bad deal for the customer, right? That doesn't fit with our math. Our math is all about mutual win, right? It's not scarcity. It's not a zero-sum game. It's a win-win, right? In our philosophy, it's how do we get the workers, the organization, and the customers to all come out better for having interacted with each other. That's the definition of a community. That's what we want in our neighborhoods, right?
Yes.
We want better neighborhoods. We want better city governments. We want better state and national governments, right? All the things that we do sort of socially, naturally, we need to bring those in and create social organic organizations. And that's just what this movement's all about.
Well, it's exciting, and that is our uplift message of the week. Be a champion of strategy. Go to willingtowin.org and tell us how you're going to put that into action and not be passive, because we want you, like Coach Mitch says, to get in the game and make a difference.
Get in the game, willing to win.
Thanks for joining us. Willing to Win is produced by Lift Productions. Guests on the program are not compensated, nor is their appearance representative of the Willing to Win views. Willing to Win does not necessarily endorse any people, products, or services.